So while we wait for everyone to join here, I figured I'd take a couple of minutes to introduce myself and tee up today's meeting a little bit. So my name is Alex. I head up our production and sourcing team here at Pietra. My background is in product and brand development. So have, before my time at Pietra, spent time, on the brand side, developing products, developing, branding, et cetera. And then since joining Pietra a little over 2 years ago, I've headed up our production and sourcing team over here, helping our top clients execute, their sourcing sprints and production runs. So today we're going to focus on beauty and skincare because it truly is a beast of its own. It's one of the most complex product categories out there. However, there are some workarounds and fun ways that you can bring a product to life without needing to, hit those high minimum order quantities or those high development fees that are sometimes associated with launching a beauty or skincare brand. I'll just give everyone a couple more minutes here and then we'll get started at 1:04 or 4:04 for you, those of you on the East Coast. Alrighty. One more minute here. Alrighty, I can see that Dr. Rima Patel here is on the Zoom as well. So today we're going to do a special kind of format. I'm going to spend the first 15 minutes or so walking through how to use the platform to, source beauty and skincare products and suppliers. And then I'm actually going to pass it over and invite Dr. Rima Patel up to co-host with me. She works for a company that it's called Glow Comply, and I'll let her give a formal introduction as well. But Dr. Rima Patel works for Glow Comply, which essentially acts as an agency helping brands get their products set up for MOCRA certification, either on the manufacturer level or on the brand level. And we'll get into what that means more down the line. But the super high level of it is that as of July 1st of this year, so just a few weeks ago, the United States has started to require MOCRA certification for all beauty and skincare products. So again, I'll let Dr. Patel kind of guide that portion of the meeting, but we'll do a Q&A at the end. So feel free to drop any questions that you might have in our chat here, and myself and Dr. Patel will do our best to get to answering all of them. Alrighty. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to log into a Pietra account so that I can share my screen. 1 second here. Perfect. Okay, now that I'm logged in, I'll start by giving everyone a walkthrough. So there are a couple bigger terms that I'll be using during today's meeting. One, of course, you'll hear the word MOCRA. I'll let Dr. Patel get into that. Again, it's a certification that's now required as of earlier this month for beauty and skincare products. Another word or acronym that you'll hear me use is MOQ. MOQ stands for minimum order quantity. And if you're not familiar with the term, an MOQ is a required minimum order quantity that a supplier or manufacturer sets for a certain product. And those are largely, like taking a step back, those are largely determined by the raw materials and labor that go into producing the product, right? Because at the end of the day, the manufacturer needs to be profitable. So they're going to look at the unit economics and say, okay, Alex wants to order, some lip glosses. We know it's going to take X amount of labor and X amount of raw materials to make those lip glosses. Her minimum order quantity for that product needs to be 100 units or 1,000 units or 5,000 units. So you'll hear me use the term minimum order quantity. In addition to this, you'll also hear me use the term private label. So private label, if you're not familiar with the term, essentially is a product that is already manufactured by the supplier and is cleared to go to market. So it's a huge win, especially in the beauty and skincare space, because it means that the product has already undergone all of the required testing, whether that's stabilization testing or, vegan claim testing, organic claim testing, clean claims, etc. It means that the burden is no longer on you to do that for a product you're developing, and instead, the supplier has already made the product, gotten it cleared with all of those terms, and then it's available for you to purchase at lower quantities and sell to your customers. It still can sometimes be changed a little bit. Maybe it's the packaging, maybe it's the fragrance. Sometimes manufacturers have flexibility to allow you to switch up the product just a little bit. But sometimes it needs to be completely exactly how they're selling it. Alrighty, now that we've gone through those couple terms, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Alrighty, so I am logged into my Pietra account here. Let me move this out of the way. And this is what we call the Pietra home base. So this is kind of the home base starting point for anything that you would want to do in Pietra. You can start by creating custom projects, create custom packaging. Maybe you're at the beginning stages of your brand and you actually need help hiring a freelancer to do your logo design or make a brand guideline. You can hire freelancers here. Sometimes we have a lot of existing clients who want to make merch for their brand. So maybe you're launching a beauty or skincare brand and you want to make a line of sweatshirts or hats or tote bags to support your launch and PR. You can click this button to start that process. Connect your suppliers if you've already, suppliers that you're working with, etc. We do also have a couple additional services that are available to our full service members, such as cost-cutting exercises and PR boxes. I'll save those for another webinar because they're kind of a beast of their own. And I want to go ahead and spend some time diving into skincare and beauty in particular. So to get to skincare and sourcing on Pietra, the first thing you want to do is go over here to where it says sourcing and then scroll down. So you can search by product. So maybe you want to do sunscreen. So you could search for sunscreen and find factories who make sunscreen or SPF products. So that's why some of these swimwear ones are showing up. It's because they have SPF in their product titles. But here you can see, suppliers that make sunscreen. Here's some with some really great private label options. You can also look at custom products. So custom products is another term that we use on platform for private label. So these are all private label products that the manufacturer has already produced. It's gone through clinical testing. It's certified as SPF 50 or SPF 30, whatever the claims might be. And you're available to purchase these directly at low MOQs. So for example, this SPF tinted powder, which is similar to what Supergoop has done, you can order just 200 units of it. And, this one has a little bit higher at 1,000 units, but it might be something that's a bit more custom. So again, this is private label. If you want to do something custom from the ground up, so maybe you want to do like a face oil, or maybe it's, foundation, that's a custom color range. I always suggest instead of browsing by product that you browse by factories, excuse me. So these are all factories here that have the capability of producing face oils. You can, click into them, read reviews. A lot of them will have references to past clients that they've worked with. So for example, Genie Supply, you can see that they have clients who retail in Nordstrom, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Free People, Urban Outfitters, and Ulta. Genie Supply would actually be a really amazing one if you're looking to do something in the skincare and beauty space. I have had a really positive experience working with them. And I can highlight a few more suppliers as well. If people want specific recommendations for certain products, feel free to drop it in the Q&A and I can highlight them at the end of this call. But yeah, that's kind of the general flow. Oh, Creator is another really great one. Creator actually, they just launched a strategic partnership with Meta. So they're going to be doing a handful of talent-backed brands with Meta as well. They're very talented, would trust them full-heartedly in producing a line. Another way that you can create products. So let's say you know exactly what you want to make, and maybe you've already talked to a chemist Or maybe you have a really specific benchmark for what you want to do. Like, you know that you want to duplicate Rare Beauty's like blush that they manufacture and is a bestseller. If that's your situation, I suggest clicking this Request Custom Project button. The Request Custom Project button, you can do it for products, packaging, and even freelancers if you're looking for a designer or a web developer, etc. But essentially what this allows you to do is create a product proposal and send it into the Pietra network of manufacturers. So instead of you needing to go through and browse and sift through, all of our manufacturers that can make sunscreen or that can make face oils or blush or mascara, whatever the product might be, this allows you to create your product brief and instead send it to the suppliers. And if the suppliers can take on your project or are interested in taking on your project, they will then send you a message. And I'll show you where you can view those messages. So for this one, we would say beauty. I'll just show you, we can do an example together. Let's say you want to make a custom tinted lip gloss, or let's do a lip stain. This is where you would add your product details. So I always urge customers to add as much information as possible. The more direct you can be with a manufacturer about exactly what you're looking for, the easier it'll be for them to come back to you and say, great, I understand what you want. Here's how we can quote it, and here's how we would execute it for you. So for example, I would include things like your target MOQ, so your minimum order quantity, your target retail price. And some of these are listed below as well. Retail price. I would say things like colors. So if you want to do something like a lip stain, you would want to list out the colors. Maybe you have very specific packaging that you want. So packaging could be a great thing to list here as well. Ingredients. So you don't have to list out a full ingredient list unless you have that, but noting that, it's really important for you to use jojoba oil, or maybe it needs to not have a very specific, like you want it silicone free. That's where you would want to include these details so that the manufacturer can get it right the first time, as opposed to proposing something that ultimately isn't what you're looking for. So you'd want to include ingredients and any claims. Claims aren't as important for some product categories, but they are really, really important for beauty and skincare, because if you go to someplace like Sephora or Target, you'll notice that every product on the shelf is making some type of claim, whether that's dermatologist recommended or clinically tested or vegan, cruelty-free. Sephora Clean even is their own made-up standard and claim. So be sure to add claims in here as well. If you have reference photos, you can attach it. Maybe you want your retail price to be $10. If there's let's go back to that Rare Beauty example. If you want to duplicate that Rare Beauty one, add a link. It'll make it much easier for the manufacturer as well. Now this section here parallels into the private label versus custom section. So maybe you want a lip stain, but it doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. There's hundreds of amazing lip stains out there. With that use case, you would be able to click readily available inventory with slight customizations. However, let's say you want to make something that's never been done before, like, I don't know, a lip stain infused with honey or something. I don't know, whatever it might be. That's where you would click typically higher MOQs for a custom product design that looks exactly like my reference photos or includes the exact project details that you're looking for. Generally, as a rule of thumb, private label you can typically get done for 100, 200 units per product. If you're doing something custom, you're in beauty and skincare, you're going to be looking at more like 2,500 units on the low end. 5,000 is if you're looking for something really premium and luxury, where you're going to be sitting. And again, that can fluctuate depending on packaging as well, right? So the lip stain might come readily available, private label at 100, 200 units in standard tubes. But if you want to use a custom tube, you might have to order more. So again, it does vary from time to time, but you could kind of use those as standard benchmarks. Do you need a custom sample before production? I always recommend yes, unless it's a reorder. And then hit next. And then from here, it just has a few more details that it needs. So let's say, you want to order 500 units, your budget's 1,000, your ideal delivery date. This is a good one. Let's talk about lead times for a second here. So in terms of lead times, private label generally has a lead time closer to 30 days because it's already manufactured, right? It's sitting on a shelf. It's just waiting for you to put your logo on it and order it. Whereas custom formulation and development, really, it can get done in six to 9 months, but to really do it right, you're looking at more like 9 to 12 months. And that is largely driven by stability testing. So when you're developing a new product in the beauty and skincare space, in order to retail it at places like Sephora or Ulta, Target, etc., doesn't really matter, any retailer, as well as to really safeguard yourself on your D2C website, you should be undergoing stability test. And what a stability test means is that they essentially manufacture their product, they put it in your component, and they let it sit on the shelf for 3 months to make sure that it doesn't split or separate. If you've ever ordered sunscreen, I'm sure you've seen when you like leave it in your car for 6 months, after a while it separates and you get the oily section and then you get the gloopy section. Of course, some separation is natural in a lot of products, but doing that stability test, make sure that it doesn't happen in the first month of owning a product, which isn't an experience that you want your customers to have. So again, click a date here that is reasonable, but within your target range. And then separate, and kind of the final piece here is to add any additional details. We added a lot of our details at the beginning, so we could leave this blank. And then this button down here. So if you are a full service member of Pietra, you can check mark this box that says get concierge help. What happens when you check mark that box is the request goes to our suppliers, but it also notifies my team on the sourcing and production side and lets us know that a full service member is looking for some extra help. So what we'll do is we'll review your brief and then send you a message through our chat feature and help kind of point you in the right direction. So then you would hit submit here. I'm not going to hit submit just because it's a demo account, but you would hit submit. And then over the next 24 or 48 hours, you would start to receive messages from suppliers. And those messages would live in your inbox. I obviously have quite a few messages in here because this is a demo account. But I always like to recommend to customers to use this tag feature. It makes it really easy to stay organized, especially if you're looking to produce multiple products. So let's say you're looking to do a skincare line with an oil, a cleanser, and a lotion, but they're all coming from different manufacturers. I would tag them so that you can, keep them organized. This is also, if this is your first experience on the platform, this is also where your invoicing and order history will live. So you can see status with supplier, totals, etc. What else is worth mentioning here? Oh, I'll show you how to message our support team. So if you go back to the sourcing home base here, and then scroll down and click into any product category. So I'll click makeup. See this button at the top here that says talk to a specialist? This prompts our chat feature. So there's a handful of bot questions that just help direct your inquiry to the right team member. So you could click something like beauty, go through this flow, so like makeup, etc. And then once you get to the end of the flow, the request actually comes directly to my team. So my team will review your inquiry. You can say, I'm looking to do makeup products, specifically eyeshadow, and I really want your assistance on picking the right manufacturer. Who would you recommend? And my team will be happy to help point you in the right direction there. So yeah, generally that's the process of kind of sourcing for skincare and beauty products on platform. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll answer the few Q&As that have come through thus far. And then I'm going to invite the team over to kind of co-host with me and walk you guys through MOCRA and what that means for the future of beauty and skincare brands. Alrighty. Opening up the Q&As here. Okay. So the first one, once you select a formula, how do you coordinate packaging and box components to be assembled and filled? What if you want to use an outside provider for packaging that's different from the formula provider? That's an excellent question. And it's a really common one. So to your point, you don't have to source the components from the skincare or beauty manufacturer. Of course, it's easier if you do. But let's say you want to do something really custom and unique, and the skincare or beauty manufacturer doesn't have that styled bottle or pump that you're looking for on hand. You can always look externally for a component supplier. We do have components manufacturers on platform. I've worked with JCG and Shine Ray a handful of times for customers. And again, if you have any direct questions on supplier suggestions, feel free to send us a chat and I can help point you in the right direction there. But essentially the process would be finalize your fill size with the skincare manufacturer so that you know you need a 5-ounce bottle versus an 8-ounce bottle. Then go to your components manufacturer, request a catalog. I always suggest starting to see if there's anything in catalog that can be customized with color and silkscreen printing before you go the route of opening a mold. Opening a mold is a really fun way to make a really unique bottle or component, but it's really expensive and comes with quite long lead times. Generally, mold opening fees start around $5,000, and then you're required to hit a minimum order quantity around 5,000 to 10,000 units. So it does get much more costly going that route. Once you decide on what components you like, I always suggest sampling a few. The next step is to get the sample components. Typically, the manufacturers want around 10 to the skincare manufacturer so that they can conduct that stability test I shared with you. Once that stability test clears, that's when you want to press go. So you press go on the formulation piece as well as the component piece with the two separate manufacturers. They can work in tandem because when you're doing custom formulation on skincare and beauty products, there tends to be a long procurement period, which means they essentially have to go out and source the raw materials to make your product. So they'll start their procurement piece while the components are in their manufacturing stage. And then on Pietra, we can help you connect the two manufacturers together so that the components get to the skincare manufacturer or the beauty manufacturer, and so that they can fill them accordingly. Most of the time, the skincare and beauty manufacturers who are making the goop or the fill, they can do the actual filling process. You will just want to ensure that they have components to do a fill test on their production line to make sure that the pouch fits on their machines or the bottles fit on their machines, but it's pretty seamless. They're used to doing it. I wouldn't be scared of going that route. Alrighty, I can see that someone's asked for manufacturer highlights on lipsticks, creams, blushes, and bronzers, as well as accessories. I'm gonna bookmark that one. For the sake of time, I do want to get it over to the team to educate you guys on MOCRA, and then I'll circle back on all of the supplier recommendations at the end. Okay, next kind of contextual question. If I want to develop a product or skincare line with the goal of getting into Sephora, do I have to have custom formulation or can I do private labeling? It's a tough question. I'm not a Sephora buyer. Generally speaking, though, I would say that buyers want something that's unique and custom. Unless the brand is like carried by a powerhouse celebrity. That's generally the only way that you can get into a retailer like Sephora or Ulta without doing custom formulation. Okay, high-end skincare line for private label and custom manufacturing. Yes, I can make some recommendations there as well. I have one supplier. I might send you a message separately on that one. I have one supplier in mind who's really, really incredible. They do have pretty high minimums though. So I just want to make sure that's within reach for you first. Next question, what is the typical shelf life of the products, or are they dated with recommended use or expiration date? So generally in the beauty and skincare space, they're not dated with a concrete expiration date. Rather, they're given a lot number. Everything legally has to have a lot number. And then you'll see oftentimes, like if you turn over a bottle, it'll have a little circle with 12M or 24M. and that's the recommended usage. Again, the manufacturer will help guide you through that process, but there won't be a like best by July 31st, 2024 date on it. Okay, Kelly, I can see your question about the new rule. We're going to get into that right now. Julia, has asked, when we start a private label product, do companies or Pietra promote or advertise new brands? We love to shout out our customers who are launching brands. So if that's something you're doing, just send us a message and say, you know, I worked with Pietra to build and scale my business. Wanted to let you guys know I'm launching on X date, and we'd be happy to shout you out. We love supporting our friends. Is that the same process for boxing and kitting as well? No. So, and this is kind of a separate webinar subject, but Pietra helps not only with the production and sourcing side of things, but also the fulfillment side of things. So if you are looking to have your company's like customer facing orders fulfilled by Pietra, we can certainly assist. We have a roughly 100,000 square foot fulfillment center based in North Carolina. It's members only, so it's only available to subscribers of Pietra. We have a Shopify API connection, which essentially means that we have a plugin that allows us to connect with your Shopify so that anytime a customer places an order, it automatically flows into our admin panel, and the warehouse team knows to go pick, pack, and fulfill your orders for you. Boxing and kitting is kind of looped into the fulfillment piece. It's something that we offer and support on that end. But again, for the sake of this webinar, because it's focused on sourcing and production, I'll let that be saved for a separate one with the fulfillment team. Alrighty, I'm just going to get to a couple more here. Is there manufacturers for aluminum-free, vegan, non-vegan body deodorant sticks or sprays? Definitely. I'm actually working on one right now for a really cool customer. So certainly we have manufacturers for that as well. Do the private label companies do drop shipping? Good question. Our system is not set up for drop shipping. So our system is truly set up for customers who want to build a scalable brand as opposed to just drop shipping private label products. So while it might be something that a couple manufacturers do, it's not something that we highlight as like a primary core tenet of Pietra. We're really positioning ourselves for customers who want to order bulk inventory and create and scale a business that way. I know it can be scary. Drop shipping is great because you don't have to have any inventory risk. But I promise you that when you place larger bulk inventory orders, it's a higher upfront investment, but you will see better profit margin because when you're ordering 500 of a product, you're getting a better unit cost. Alrighty, I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Doug, one final question here has asked if there's any good options for men's skincare. We do. I'm working on a men's skincare line right now. So again, for anyone who wants specific questions answered, I showed you how to send a message to our support team. Feel free to message us there and we can help point you in the right direction. Alrighty. I am going to go ahead and invite Dr. Patel to be a co-host here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, Dr. Patel, I just invited you. There you go. And I think you should be able to turn your camera on if you want to.
Okay.
Let's see here. I think I should leave you up so that you can.
Okay, perfect. Hi.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I don't know how we want to do this. Like, do we want to run through the PowerPoint or do we want to just answer questions? I don't know how educated everyone is, so.
I would say let's start from ground zero here. So I've already downloaded the PowerPoint. I'll throw it up right now, and then let you walk through it, unless you prefer to share your screen and walk through it.
You can share your screen. That would be great.
Okay. Let me do that right now. Alrighty. Okay, can everyone see? I think so.
Perfect. So my name is Rima Patel. I'm a physician by training, and I work for a company called Glow Comply. Essentially, we help you be compliant with the new regulations that have been passed for beauty, skincare, and personal care products in the United States. And so here's a brief overview of what MOCRA is. So basically, it's the Modernization of Cosmetics Act. It's actually one of the first legislations passed nationally in the United States since 1938. And so we're going to start to see more stricter enforcement. I do want to caveat that with that the MOCRA does not supersede state regulations. So we're starting to see California, Washington, Nevada, New York, they actually have additional requirements and processes. So as the year goes through, we're sort of going to see how the states are really pushing the regulations. So your products might have to be even further compliant than what MOCRA requires currently. And so here are the basic requirements of what MOCRA means. Your manufacturing facility essentially has to be registered with the FDA. Your products, you as a brand have to register them with the FDA. You do have some leeway that once you launch into the market, you do have an X amount of allotted days that are fluctuating for when you need to be registered. If you're already currently on the market, you should have technically been compliant by July 1st of this year, but they're giving you a little bit more room until December to make sure that you really have the requirements in. And then we're going to go over who the responsible person would be for your brand, labeling requirements, and then the last one will be the adverse reporting.
Awesome.
And so I kind of gave you guys a brief overview of like what MOCRA already was. And so the reason why MOCRA is important is that if you don't actually get compliant and registered, let's say your product is shipping from overseas, for example, right? So it can get held up at the ports. Let's say you're already on the shelves, you might have problems with legal if someone ends up having some sort of reaction to your product that wasn't previously documented. And so the first step of MOCRA is like, who is the responsible person? So there's a lot of confusion around the legislation that technically the responsible person is not just your manufacturer, it's whoever's name goes on the brand. So if I have my own skincare line called Rima, I essentially need to make sure that I also am certified as the responsible person and register my product with the FDA. And so what does that mean? So basically, that means your product has to be listed. You have to have a system in place for people to report side effects. Your label has to be compliant, and then you need a record for the side effects that are reported that the FDA can ask you for at any time. And so here's the basics of the brand registration and product listing. Like I mentioned, if you're already on the market, really the deadline was July 1st, 2024. It's new, it's confusing, so they are giving a little bit more room. If you are a larger size brand, if you're over $5 or $6 million in revenue, you probably really need to start to get all that stuff together now. And so there's an annual update required for brands. And then if you have a change in formula, ingredients within 60 days, you really need to get that registered and have that change reflected with the FDA. And then make sure the facility that you choose, really it's important if you're starting your brand from day zero, that your facility is actually registered with the FDA. And then what is the adverse event reporting? So under the MOCRA guidelines, within 15 days of someone having some sort of reaction, and here's the list of examples, and then I've included a link if you really want to go through exactly which ones, but if anyone has any infection, hospitalization, death, life-threatening experience, it's really important to have that reported with the FDA. And you have to also make sure that, for example, with social media, it kind of gets a little bit more tricky if someone goes on TikTok and is talking about all the side effects that have been caused by your product. It's probably in your best interest to just go ahead and register that side effect, even though that might just be a one-off thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll get questions about this. So just so everyone knows, we will send this recording after the meeting and we'll include the PDF that we're presenting now. So you can click on these links and explore further if you have any questions.
And then what are the new labeling requirements? So the new labeling requirements now need you to have a contact information for your adverse event reporting. And then if your product is going through med spas or doctor offices, you really need to have a professional use only labeling. If you're mainly like a e-com brand, that part doesn't apply to you, but the contact information and adverse reporting does. And then if you are a perfume brand, it's very, very important that you have your fragrance allergen labels listed on your product. And then what is the safety substantiation? So basically, these are the tests and studies that have been done to make sure that your product is safe. Usually, if you're getting your product manufactured with an existing formula with the manufacturer, they already have these sheets ready for you. And that's why it's important to have that FDA registered facility, because you can actually just pull those records from them and they'll have that information. And let's say there's some problem with your brand, you can go in and have an expert come in and they can pull the research studies. And so it's not as large of a problem if you're using existing formulas with your manufacturers. It's also important to make sure that you understand when your manufacturer actually stops being FDA compliant. There was a recent case of US manufacturers that actually did not end up being compliant. And so it's not really a case of you using international versus US. It's really a case of you making sure that the manufacturer that you're going with is FDA registered. The other thing that I would like to point out is that we've been in conversations with Amazon and Walmart's e-com marketplace to understand what they're going to do in terms of this legislation. So Amazon has already sort of started a rough implementation of what they're going to require. And so they're going to ask you now, if you were to launch, to make sure that you have the FDA registration, and they're going to ask for a few more information fields. And they've honestly taken a larger action of kind of kicking out third-party sellers that aren't able to provide this information, which is great for you as a brand because there won't be as many counterfeit goods sold for you. They haven't released official guidelines, and Walmart is still sort of working through how exactly are they going to interpret this legislation. And then there is a small business exemption. So let's say you have less than $1 million in total revenue. You are currently exempt from MOCRA. However, that doesn't mean that your manufacturer is exempt from MOCRA. Unless you're at home making your product, that's essentially fine as long as it's under $1 million. The exceptions are if you have any eye products, so mascara or any lip products, so even something as simple as like a lip gloss, lipstick, even if you're making it at home, you do have to make sure that you're registered with the FDA.
And one flag here is even if you're just starting out and doing a face oil or a moisturizer, it is important to consider that your manufacturer is certified, A, because they legally have to, but also because as you grow and scale, you will want to be set up with a manufacturer that is set up to scale with you, as opposed to going through the process of creating a product and then needing to pivot down the line.
And then there's the combination products. And so this gets a little bit more confusing in terms of how you're marketing your product. If you have a product such as a sunscreen, which we had talked about earlier, the sunscreen actually gets registered differently under the FDA, which was already a prior requirement. However, if you're marketing it as a beauty product and as a sunscreen, you actually do need dual registration. So you would have to actually register separately under MOCRA as well. So some of the products that I like to bring up as examples, again, it's like the like a blush with like SPF in it. Right now, according to the guidelines, they are doing dual registration as required, especially if the main focus is on this being a sun protectant blush. And then the rules around this are still a little bit hazy, but as we go through, it's probably better to be safer than sorry when it comes to certain products. And then what do we do? So basically we help you with all your compliance needs. So we actually help you list your product on the FDA portal. We help you manage your adverse reporting system. We can review and audit your product label and your artwork for compliance. We can also take a look at your ingredients and provide you sort of the latest of what legislations are going to come out. So let's say, for example, you're developing a product today, but then California in 2025 is planning to ban PFAS. So if they are doing that, then that means that really you want to make sure from day one that you're compliant so that you don't have to go through a reformulation, re-registration. And then the other thing I like to point out is that if you do plan on making your brand global, the EU and Canada are a little bit more stricter when it comes to ingredients. And then Korea, again, we'll see another strict guidelines, and Japan.
Makes sense. So for everyone here, Glow Comply is set up with a Pietra. We've set them up as like a freelancer account. So if you are in the process of developing a brand or you have an existing brand and you want to take advantage of their services, you can access them via Pietra and send them a message to get the conversation going. Perfect. Okay, I think we can open it up for some more Q&As. Let's try to keep them MOCRA specific or certification specific for the sake of Dr. Patel's time. But feel free to drop any questions in there. And I think Dr. Patel, you can see the Q&As now, correct?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, let's see if anyone has any questions here.
Okay, so I think one of the first, or do you want to ask the question? Okay.
You go.
So I guess the first question that we've gotten is, do you assist in global compliance requirements? Yes, we do. We do have to take a look at your existing product to see if we actually have the availability right now to take you on for global compliance. As I mentioned, EU regulations are a little bit more stricter. So if you were not within our pipeline, there are certain companies that we will not be able to do currently, and we'll send them over to another partner.
Amazing. Alrighty. Someone has asked about the pricing of the compliance processes.
Yeah, so it really just depends. So we do have a per product registration for smaller brands. If you are a larger brand, so if you have over 5 products, we actually do have a custom packaging pricing that we can offer you. But if you are under 5 products, I can give you the rough price of registration with the FDA, which is between $500 and $700 to register your product. And then all the additional services will have XYZ costs associated, depending on, for example, like if we need your label to actually go through the legal team, that will be a little bit more expensive than if we just could like review it and just have you put down like what we need you to have on label. The second is that we can also help you with side effects for the label. So we can actually provide you a QR code, which you can actually take to your preferred label maker. So we do not print labels, but let's say Pietra has some amazing label providers on their platform. We can actually give you the QR code, which you can then have your label provider put on your package, and then that will have your side effect and safety reporting, which is something that I think most people like to do, especially if you have like a nice, cute eyeliner. You probably don't want to, stick all the information right then and there, but if you have a QR code, then it's very easy and simple.
Amazing. Looks like there's a couple more if you want to take those too.
Yes. So curious about the cost of compliance processes. Okay, so the local process for the US, since we are working specifically mainly with US product registrations for smaller brands, the US process will be cheaper. The EU actually does have additional costs associated, not just from our side, but maybe also through their regulatory agencies if you need extra things done on your product. When selling your skincare product for fulfillment center in the UK, but product made in the US, what needs to be in order? Okay, again, there's a lot of requirements that you need for the EU that are different than the US. We do have a checklist that we can provide you with that will have all the details of what specifically you need to get ready for EU compliance. If registering more than one product, how would I go about registering multiple products? Okay, so basically, you have to go through the FDA. You basically become a registered responsible person. So if you were doing it yourself, you yourself would have to serve as the certifying organization and then go through all the steps that are detailed within the FDA website.
Amazing. Well, and if that's everything on MOCRA that people had questions on, I think we can probably go ahead and wrap up for the day. There's a couple other questions here that are more supplier specific and more pertinent to how our warehouse works. So for those questions, I'll have my team reach out via our support channel and just make sure that everyone is all settled up. Well, thanks so much for joining today. It was lovely chatting with you.
Yeah, of course. And thank you guys so much for having us here.
Of course. Alrighty, thanks everyone. We'll be in touch shortly with the recording of today as well as the PDF to review all of the information from GlowComply. Alrighty, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.